Jim,
All right, we are live. Greetings and salutations. This is the Loophole King live from the Blue Cheese Room of the Dark Side of the Moon. Tonight is DMs After Dark. We are going to have a few DMs, a few new DMs than what we had last week. But first, a few announcements. First and foremost, thank you all who have been watching and supporting and following the stream. We really appreciate it. Those of you who are over on Patreon, please check that out. And make sure that down below you can see a donation panel for Extra Life. Extra Life donates money. Their charity goes to the Children's Miracle Network, which the money will go to the Cincinnati Children's Hospital here in the greater Cincinnati area. Great people. They've taken care of my two of my oldest kids, and one of my friend's children. They're great people, and all the money goes to them. So give what you can, $1, $5. Couple of quick other announcements. First, I'd like to thank my sponsor, Comic Book World. Comic Book World is nice enough that they are going to donate a small box of D&D minis when we hit 50 followers. We're going to random that off to our first 50 followers. Also, for every 10 followers, we are going to gift a sub to DM the Mark Knight for his random quest. Mark can give you some details. I'm going to let everybody plug their stuff here in a minute. And we would like to invite you to the game What Lies Ahead on Sundays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time to watch a bunch of DMs and some players play D&D. It is a great campaign. The characters are awesome, and you will definitely enjoy yourself.
It is awesome.
So I'm going to start with Mark because Mark wasn't here last week. Mark, go ahead.
I wasn't.
Go ahead and introduce yourself and give yourself a little plug.
So I'm actually not going to be able to stick around after all. I got to go take care of some things. But I am the Mark Knight. I am a DM that plays with Rick a couple nights a week now. And he started off on my channel role playing for a couple of my games. And I will hop back later if I can, but we are trying to get my players have been trying to get me to dab for the last 2 months, and I refused to do it. But I told them if they get us to 200 subscribers on our channel that I will do it. We're at 135, so they are pumping it out, trying to kill it. But yeah, watch Rick's stream. Keep watching this. I'll jump back if I can, and come check us out at the DM the Mark Knight here on Twitch as well. Sorry about that. I just I have to take care of some things, and I'll be back if I can.
Believe me, I totally understand.
Yeah, I'll be back. Bye.
And we'll go to Dr. Diz.
check out Dr. Diz _DM because Dr. Diz on social media is kind of taken by some other people, so I just threw the DM on there. I guess this is my first time on the show. I think it's only the second show though, so so I DM 2 campaigns. One on Friday nights. It's not every week; it's more like every other week. And one on Saturday nights, and I kind of alternate the weeks on those. That way, I don't just get destroyed through the week preparing for them. And then I play in a couple other games. I have another streamer on Twitch here that DMs a game, and I get to play a Warforged in that, and I play in another game just for fun, off camera. So it's always fun to do that too. So
awesome. And Iz.
Hi there, I'm Izzy, brandy new DM. I run the Nat 30s, and currently we're running a kind of modified Tyranny of Dragons with a lot of also brandy new DM Dungeons and Dragons players who have named themselves the Bones of Greenest. So we run that game Tuesdays and Saturdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And then every once in a while, I'll also kind of stream whatever game it is I'm playing right now, Final Fantasy VII Remake, on PlayStation. But yeah.
You just hit affiliate last week, correct?
Yes. Actually, it might have been couple of weeks now, but we did hit affiliate and are doing our giveaways and everything. We have a giveaway for July and for when we hit our 100 followers, and I think we're like right on the cusp of 15 subs when I can then make another emote, which I'm very excited also for.
That is awesome. I love that little emote that you have. I am sorely jealous of that little thing. So, all right, so we're gonna get started. Like I said, this is a normal roundtable. I'm gonna ask some questions, and then we'll give our answers, and then we'll have the chat ask some questions here in a little bit. So I got some notes and some feedback from the last time we did this, and one of the questions was, how do you help new players learn to role play? Not the technical stuff, but the actual role play. Diz, we'll start with you.
Okay. So I've been DMing for going on probably a decade now. So, and I play with a few different players. I do have a pretty standard group, and we've kind of learned as we've went along. But if I find that some players don't want to get into the role play as much, and that's okay. But a lot of times I might encourage them, especially if you're streaming, kind of off stream, not in front of everybody, because I have one player that is pretty reserved, and I kind of encourage him, talk to him, and he really enjoys the game, but he just plays it a different way than everybody else. So a lot of times when like that particular player, I will specifically engage them one-on-one, because they'll kind of sink back into the crowd. So I will particularly have an NPC dial in on that particular character. And in those moments that I've done that, a lot of times they come right out of their shell and just, blossom right on screen, and it's just an amazing moment for me as well as probably them. So
That's awesome. Yeah, it's always good to see them kind of come out and start to get a feel for their character. So what about you, Isbeth?
I do the exact same thing as much as I can. I've told them all right from the beginning, like role playing is playing the role, not necessarily acting. So as long as you're playing the character, whether it's like speaking as them or acting as them, I consider that role playing. I know that a lot of my players want to get better at the acting and improv part, and so that's always something that we work on. I mean, I'm not awesome at it either, so I would love to get better at it, and I will as time goes on. I've only been doing this for 6 months. But I do the exact same thing. I try to keep in mind, like, who have I not focused on in like a session or so, and then try to think of something that directly impacts them. Especially like I know the characters. I'm very good friends with everybody who I'm playing with, and I've known some of them for 32 years. So I know who's going to talk, who's not going to talk, and if I engage a certain person, like how to get them to talk a little bit more. So that's what I'll do, is just if anybody's kind of like hanging out on the side and hasn't spoken for a little bit, I just focus in on them and try to get them chatting.
Yeah, my take on it is similar. I try to find the ones that aren't role playing as much, and I normally do two things. One, first I address the player themselves and ask them, "Is there a reason you're not like?" And I try to, you're not trying to be forceful about it, but you want them to have fun in your game. So asking them, what is it that's preventing you from participating in this part of the game, right? Because role playing and role playing ROLE and role playing ROLL are combined in this game. And if you're just there to roll the dice, you really don't need other people, or there's not a lot to be done. So I always try to find a way. Well, what's keeping it? Well, I don't feel like I have a good grasp of my character. Okay, so I send them. I tell them, well, tell me who this person is, right? Go home, write down a couple of paragraphs, or type out a couple paragraphs of who this person is. Where'd they grow up? What was their childhood like? Where do you see them? Where are they at now? And where do you think that you'd like to see them be when they get to be 10th level? And a lot of times they go, well, I never thought about that. I just kind of like made a fighter. I'm like, yeah, but who is your fighter? Like, who is this person? And I try to come at it the same way I make characters. I make characters based on the person, and then I find the race, class, ability scores or whatnot that fulfills that role. And I always plan my characters to 10th level because I want to have a plan. If everything goes the way I want it to as a player, where am I going to end up at 10th level? Because I think that heroes aren't made until 10th level, right? And when you get to 10th level, then you're like, okay, I haven't been killed. I've got some money in my pocket. I got a couple magic items. Like, you really feel like a real adventurer hero. And, that's when the stakes start to climb a lot at, like, those breakpoints at like 5th level, 10th level, 15th level, when those story breakpoints kind of push you into that next foray of, oh, well, all these creatures have multiple abilities, and now we're going to run into bosses that have lair actions, legendary actions and things like that. So I try to plan that to 10th, and then I go, this is where I want him to be, but the story will take me somewhere else, right? And how do you balance, then I'm like, well, this is the character, what would he do in this situation? So I found that making them make sure that they know who their character is, not just a sheet full of stats, is so much better for them to role play, because then they have an idea. Well, no, he grew up on a farm. He would never do that. Oh, well, then they start to do that kind of thing. So I think that's really important, and it's one of those things that it teaches better character creation skills, which is something that a lot of newer players and even older players, I have older players who they're bad at character creation. Like, they're just like, they're not good at it at all, and I tell them, I'm like, look, man, who do you want to play? And that actually leads us to the next question that we had. Players who make characters based entirely on pre-existing media. E.g., I want to play Kimhari from FX10. I want to play, an Avatar from Bender. I want to play John Wick, or I want to play the Incredible Hulk. So, Izzy, how do you deal with players who want to make characters based solely on that pre-existing media character? Or how would you if you had somebody that did that?
I was gonna say, all of my players really got into creating everything from scratch, like down to making combo moves and chatting with each other. And none of them have played before.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I think it would depend on the game that I'm running, but I would try to encourage some uniqueness, and depending on the game, I'd probably not break it, because I want them to have fun, but just try to insert something unique in there so that they have to think differently. But I don't know, honestly. I think I might be too new at this to know how I would handle a situation like that.
All right, that's fair. I don't know is a fair answer. A lot of times, and I think, honestly, that's a good thing for a DM to learn how to say is, I don't know, let me look. Or anything. DMs who want to make a decision right on the spot and don't say, let me think about it, they run into more problems than not.
Right.
Yeah. So, Diz, you've been DMing for about 10 years, so I know you've run into this at least once or twice. I can see the look in your eye. So how do you deal?
So I don't have a huge problem with similarities, of course, because it's super hard to be unique and just come up with a completely unique ideal. If you could do that, you'd probably be, writing stories and selling books or making movies or something. But I do have people that make characters that are similar, and what I'll do with them is I'll work with them one-on-one with their storyline. their backstory to begin with, and as we're going through the campaign, I'll work with some of the people that I play with, so I have opportunities to pull them aside and be like, hey, let's talk about this for a few minutes, and so that kind of helps, I guess, entice them over to be more unique. Me just constantly kind of saying, hey, this is cool, but what about this idea? We could incorporate that, and then you'd see just their eyes light up, and they're like, oh yeah, we could do that. And then then they kind of push away just the pre-built storyline of the Incredible Hulk or Iron Man or something like that. I really like to make my stories as well character driven. So I do a lot with that. So it's not just you go to this town and there's these side quests and stuff like that. A lot of times there are some side quests, but there are quest specific things that it tie into the character themselves. So it's really a reward system. If they spend the time to do it, then I'm going to spend the time to build the story around their character as well. So.
Yeah, I've had a lot of experience with the well, Iz knows, and most of the viewers know, but if they're new to listening to me, I've been playing since '81, and I've been DMing off and on for more than half of that. So I've got a few years under my belt. So yes, when Dritz became a thing, every player wanted to play, the Drow that was sneaky, and it had the Panther companion and the two scimitars, or they wanted to play Wolfgar, the big barbarian with the dwarven thrower, or all these characters that are written in the D&D books, or all these comic book characters. And it's okay to allow that once or twice if you just say, like, okay, you'll just take the reins off and just say, yeah guys, make whatever you want, right? But most of those campaigns are going to de-evolve in 3 to 6 months, right? Because you can't sustain that level of power and kind of thing for too long. There's just not enough story. There's not a way to keep the story moving when your players get super powerful.
Right.
So, oh, hey Mark.
I'm back. Sorry about that.
Oh no, it's no problem. We were just asking, and I was going on my question. When you have, stop doing that. I'm trying to move me and not you guys, and that's not working. I hate that ever so much. I really do.
You can try running your video through Discord as well, so that we all have a window in Discord, and then you don't have to worry about the OBS.
I tried that, and it didn't go well for me the last time I tried that. So
yeah, I understand.
Technology.
Yeah, technology. You know what I mean, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, Mark, the question was, how do you deal with players who want to make a character based on pre-existing media, aka playing Dritz, playing an Airbender, playing those kinds of stuff from a pre-existing media,
as opposed to being inspired by something a pre-existing media, actually
right.
Playing a character. Well, yeah. That's a good question. I don't know that I have talked to players, and I have run for players who have wanted to do that. And usually it's someone who's very new to the game, right? Like it's their first time playing D&D a lot of times.
Yeah.
So they don't really know what they're looking at, and so they take something that they're familiar with and try to apply it to something they're unfamiliar with. And a lot of times I will usually just communicate with that person and be like, hey, why don't we look at the game and see if there's something in the game that kind of gets you interested and gets you hooked, and see if we can't go that way. Another thing, something that I don't know if anybody else brought this up, but something that Matt Colville does is having people roll in order with their stats, because It's like if you tell somebody, hey, let's wipe away your thoughts of anything pre-existing, and let's start by just rolling stats in order. A lot of times, though, like I said, it's usually newer players who've never played D&D before who bring this up. And my solution to that is if I'm introducing somebody to D&D who's never played before, I usually bring them in for a one-shot, and I will have pre-made characters and have them try the game as a pre-made character first. This way they understand what they're getting into. So when they make their own character for the first time, they have some kind of an idea of what they're looking at.
Yeah, that's a good point. The one shot is always a good way to bring in new players. As I was saying right before we got here, is I have a tendency to do one or two things. Either go ahead and just let everybody, just take the reins off and say, go nuts, and those games normally last 3 to 6 months because of the power creep that's involved with people playing, got John Wick, I got Dritz, I got, an airbender, I got Tony Stark. So yeah, it's going to get out of control really fast. And I let the players know that up front. The other way is like you said, I try to, and like Diz said, is I try to make their choices, I try to give them choices so that they alter that character in a unique way, right? Like, yeah, you can start off saying, I want this guy to be an airbender, I'm playing a monk. Cool. And, they get to third level and they take the, the way of the 4 elements. Cool. And they want to be air. Gotcha. But there are ways in the story to craft that in such a way that they make different decisions because that's what their character would do and get them to do those kind of things. I did have another really good question. And I'm going to start with Mark. And this one is more of an opinion. Free DMing versus tipping DMing versus paid DMing. Do you do it? And what's your opinion on the 3 modes of, how we do this on Roll20 or any other, social media platform? So we'll start with you, Mark. Free, tipping, paid. What's your opinion?
I think I think that some of my opinions are clear on this because I am a professional dungeon master right now,
right?
And I do receive tips for D&D. I don't ask for payment. I didn't start out asking for so we'll go through the 3. You said free, tipping, or paid.
Right.
Free DMing is something I've done for my whole life. That's a part of D&D, and that's a part of the whole thing all the way through is free DMing is a part of it. Look, when it comes down to it, when I'm sitting down to play D&D with my friends, and when I'm sitting down to play D&D with a group of people who are paying me, there are differences. There are differences because of the group dynamics and everything. Your friends don't expect to have to pay you to run D&D. But I run D&D for 30 people who, before we started playing together, we were strangers. It was up front that I was asking for tips because this is my livelihood. If I hire a DJ if I ask my friend to come DJ a party that I'm inviting him to, he's going to be like, look, this is my job. You're going to have to pay me. I'm providing a service. I put out time and money into doing this and preparing this and everything like that. And so my opinion is that I'm offering a service. I take my time outside of when I'm sitting down at the table to prepare something to entertain others. And am I getting to enjoy what I'm doing? Yes, absolutely. I get to enjoy what I'm doing. Does that mean that just because I enjoy what I'm doing, I shouldn't be compensated for my time? No, there's lots of people who enjoy doing something that is a service industry that also get it compensated for their time. I think that you get what you pay for. If you're sitting down with a group of friends and somebody has to DM and it's always the same person and you go to them to DM, like, you're going to get what you have. Some of them are going to be good, some of them are going to be bad. If you go to a game store to play with whatever DM they have sitting there for Adventurers League, you're going to get whatever they have. When you pay to play, when you pay a DM, well, you can hire and fire that DM. If that DM is not the type of DM that's worth the money, that's fine. But usually if you're a DM asking to be paid for your time, it's because you know that you bring value and you have other people who can back that up.
Yeah.
A reason I started off as a DM that accepts tips as opposed to a DM that's looking for you must pay me this much per session is because I didn't feel that I had the reputation to be able to do that. But over the time that I've been doing this for three months or so as a paid DM online, I have 30 players who can vouch for my style of DMing. I have video evidence that can vouch for my style of DMing. I have things that I can say, look, I have 5 slots available for a game. If you want to come play, here is what I do. Here's video evidence of what I do. You can come join our Discord and you can talk to my players and see what value I bring. I'm asking for tips around this amount because this is my livelihood right now. This is what I do for a living. I run 6 games a week. I take time away from my family to do this. And let's face it, there are a plethora of players out there and the number of DMs are limited. And again, you get what you pay for. If you want a quality game and you're willing to pay a little bit, you're going to get a better quality game than if you're not, than if you just go and find whoever you can find. Do I think that either one is like better than any other? Not really. Like, I'm exhausting the subject. I think I'm rambling at this point.
It's okay. I'm sorry. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing that Nightbot clubbed Ectherion over the head because he tried to spam like 4 messages full of emotes. so Diz, your thoughts on the whole pay thing? I don't know if you're paid to DM or not for your group at the moment.
No, I'm not paid. I don't really have a problem against people doing that. I've actually, talked about it with friends, in the past. That one of my friends had a big ideal of someday owning like a bar, like a nerd bar, and having a constant DM presence there that would run games and stuff like that. I mean, like, that's right up my alley, But no, that's not my livelihood. I do it completely for fun, and any tips I get, through subs or whatever, through the streaming, more than welcome. I just kind of pump that back into, what I do in the DM and stuff. So, but I don't have a problem with it, and I also, run some small games on the side just for fun. It has nothing to do with money, so it's just for friends. So it's all about just having fun for me, and if I make a little bit of money at it, or if I was to get popular, then great. If not, then still great. So.
What about you, Liz?
Yeah, I mean, similar. I started off as it was all of us just playing. I have the privilege of having a very lucrative job. As opposed to a lot of my friends, and it's all luck, I'll tell you that. But, I am privileged in that way, and as a result, I can kind of provide resources so that my friends can play and, have the books and all of that. I think that being a DM is a craft. It's storytelling. It's the ability to tell stories collaboratively, but the DM runs the show, and for people who are doing it professionally and getting paid, it's no different than being an author or anything like that, in my opinion. You are being paid because you are good at storytelling, engaging people, and helping them to have fun, and not just have fun, but as we all have seen during this very crazy time, this escape is very important for people's mental health. We're trying to fill this gap where all of this physical interaction disappeared very quickly. You know, I'm lucky enough to live in a house with a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and my husband and a dog, and there's people all around all the time. And but then I have friends who live alone, and like they can't go anywhere. And like now, you know, I'm in Massachusetts, so we're just starting to open up very slowly. But this has provided a lot of people with community, social interaction, mental escape from everything. And if you have somebody who you feel comfortable paying so that they can provide that for you, then I mean, I would never judge any kind of art that is being paid for. If you make art and people are willing to pay for it, then good for you, because it shows that you are either very good at marketing yourself, or you're very good at your job, or both. And if people are willing to give you something to have you continue being able to do that, then I think that that's a great thing. On our stream, I would say that anything that we get, I'm trying to, like, again, use it to make the stream better, as I have mentioned, as anyone who has watched us has seen. I'm the only one, again, who has like technology. And luckily I run the stream, but I got people with like cell phones, like barely catching cameras. And so with all of that, we try to use it to reinvest on the stream. But once we get to a point where everybody's like good, I'm going to probably reimburse myself. And then, you know, if I'm good enough to continue DMing and get tips for that, I'm happy to continue with it, and everything would go back towards the stream most likely. But yeah, I think it's good. I've heard stories of people getting paid like $500 an hour, and my whole thought really is like, if people are willing to pay you that, then you must be doing something right. So how am I going to judge your craft?
Yeah.
That's what you charge.
I was really on the fence about it when, because for me, I've played games on Roll20 before. Friends of mine, you know, a couple of games here and there. But when this all started and I couldn't DM our Saturday game, it's really hard for me, because that is, you know, as you guys know, I am, you know, bipolar. I do have those anxiety issues. I do have those personal issues. And if I don't get a chance to release those, you know, that stuff kind of builds up and builds up. And D&D has been my nearly free, inexhaustible therapist for 38 years, right? And I know it's like that for a lot of people, but when I went on to Roll20, really started looking at it and saw all these, you know, $10 a day, like $10 a session, I was like, wow, man, that's a lot of cash to sit down for 4 hours. And then for, you know, to play, you know, just to show up and let somebody play. And then I started thinking, well, no, this person has got to do it. And I started thinking about how much time I put into, you know, and I have 2 weeks between sessions for my live game. So, you know, I don't have to spend every waking moment getting ready. If you're running like Mark does 6 games a week, and you've got, you know, 30 players that you have to plan what steps they are going to take for Monday, what steps are we going to take for Tuesday, what steps are we going to take for Wednesday twice, what's, you know, those kinds of things, then yeah, your time is worth money. And it was just a mental thing. I hadn't really thought about it. You know, the first time I thought about it was like, man, that's a lot of money to be paying somebody just to DM a D&D game online. Like, there's not, you know, then I started looking into it. I was like, oh, okay, now I understand. You know, it took a moment for me to wrap my head around it. And once I did, I was like, oh, yeah, that's, you know, and then I started thinking, that doesn't seem like enough, right?
Right.
You know,
When I'll tell you, I do run 6 games a week. If I spend 4 hours playing with a group, I generally spend anywhere between an hour and 2 hours preparing for a session. So that means I'm spending 6 hours for one group. And if I have 5 people in that group tipping me $10 a piece for 6 hours of play, for 6 hours of time, I'm making $50, which is less than $10 an hour. So like on the one hand, it does seem like I'm spending $10 a week to play D&D. It's like if you went to a movie every week, you'd be spending $10 for 2.5 hours of entertainment as opposed to 4 hours of entertainment that was non-interactive. And at the same time, I'm making less than $10 an hour to do that. And I think that, like I said, that's 6 hours. That's 6 hours that I am spending putting effort into the lives of 5 people that are not my family or friends.
Right.
So I feel like asking for tips in exchange for a job well done I don't think that's something that is out of the question. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah. So our next question is kind of it's one of those that is kind of controversial sometimes. When you do role play, when do you, as a DM, when do you role play an NPC, and when do you role play a scene, and when do you just hand wave it for the purpose of expediting the story? And we'll start with Izzy.
So in the beginning times, 6 months ago, I tried to do a lot of research on this because, so I've been playing D&D for a while, since I was like 9, 20 something, 5 years. I don't know how old I am anymore, but I'd never DM'd. And I ended up, not having anybody to play with for a long time. And kind of got back into it like when I just got overwhelmed with everything going on in the country last year or the year before, and decided to kind of take a break because political science bachelor's degree, criminal justice master's degree, I'm in it. Plus my job, which I won't go into all the details, but I needed to disconnect, and so I found Critical Role. And so watching Matt Mercer, and of course, I keep in my head, I'm like, these are all trained actors, and this is what they do, and they are getting paid for this, and they are trained to act, and all of that fun stuff. I tried to just pay attention to, even when these trained actors, or Matt Mercer, who is very good at what he does, trying to pay attention to when he plays out a scene and when he just kind of expedites it. And then did some research on other DMs, tried to get some, diverse points of view there as well. And I try to focus on, like I said, we're running Tyranny of Dragons, but before we started, I had everybody create epic backstories. It was not necessarily my intention, but they really got into it. So they all have epic backstories that I'm weaving into Tyranny of Dragons. And so sometimes I'm like, does this advance what is going to happen in either the main story or somebody's backstory, like the bad guy or goal at the end? And if not, then I try to just roll through it. Or if I really like an NPC, for some reason, I might randomly role play, just to also give them an opportunity to role play a little bit more, because I know they really like it. But I wouldn't say there's a rhyme or reason to it, other than me just trying to feel things out and trial and error at this point, because I'm so new at this. But as long as I can get the players a little bit more time to role play, as you've seen with the travel, anybody who's watched, we've traveled for the past almost 50 days in my campaign at this point, and they wanted to do a lot of role play during that time. So that was my goal over the travel thing that could have been a montage, but turned into a like two months of traveling. But yeah, that's how I roll with it.
How about you, Diz?
Well, I like Izzy. I just kind of fill it out. Usually, if it's like a shopping episode or something like that where we're just going through buying things, I won't role play every shop that they go into, but I may feel it out. I may throw an NPC in there that is kind of unique and see if they bite on it. And if they do, then I've had NPCs become crucial parts of campaigns because just those random moments that occur. And then you can kind of weave them into the storyline as they kind of reoccur later and actually mean something to the characters. But I really just try to feel it out, and the only time I really force like a role play moment is if it's like a crucial part of the storyline or something like that. I'll really describe the moment and stuff like that, and try to draw them in and try to get them to role play, and then then I'll jump into character and try to continue with it. Other than that, I try not to be forceful, because if you force them to role play, sometimes I have gotten into moments where I've done that because everybody makes mistakes DMing, and it drags it out, and they might still have fun, but they could have had more fun doing some other stuff. So I try to learn from my mistakes, and I try to watch other DMs. I definitely be checking you guys out. I've already watched some of your streams and stuff like that, so I try to learn what other people do and try to steal some of that and incorporate it into how I do things. So
Awesome, Mark. If you could answer that question, I'll be right back.
Sure. It really is. I compare dungeon mastering to the difference between like cooking and baking, where when you're cooking, it's kind of an art where you have to really feel out what the right ingredients are. Sometimes, if you know the basics, if you know the theory behind it, you can kind of play with it and figure it out. When it comes to knowing which NPCs to role play and act out, and what times to kind of hand wave things and move forward a little quickly, expedite the situation. You really get a feel for the pace of the game you're running in any particular situation. If you like you said, Diz, in certain shopping situations, there are shopping episodes where I've role played out every single shopkeeper that they've gone and talked to, because there's more going on than just shopping in those moments, or because sometimes what I have prepared is a little light, but what my players want to do is a little extensive, or they get to a new city for the first time and they're really excited about exploring that city. I might role play the shopkeepers a little more, because it might give them a little bit of a feel for what that city is like as opposed to another place they've been. So sometimes I role play out those moments, and sometimes I might start role playing out a scene with a character like a shopkeeper or something like that, and then part of the way through that interaction, I kind of move things forward a little quickly, and it'll go from a conversational interaction in a role-playing way to after a few minutes he tells you this, and this, and then you guys decide that it's time to move on, or something like that, and I just kind of wrap up the rest of the conversation with a yada yada hand wave of what they need to know. And it really is about feeling the pace of the situation and knowing when it's time to move on, or if I have a session that I know there's something that they need to get to because it's an important story element, but they're doing all of this stuff around town trying to gather all of this equipment and shopping, then I'll hand wave a lot of the role playing to get to the stuff that they need, that's integral to the story. But if there's not a lot planned and they're just trying to explore and gather some items, and it's a more character-driven episode, I'll throw in role-playing interactions. One of the things I keep in my back pocket, though, is I'll usually have a list of secrets, lore, and history that about the world or about the adventure or the campaign or whatever it is they're trying to do. And I have that in my back pocket so that if there is a role-playing interaction that they hook onto, I have the opportunity to seed a rumor or see a little piece of information that they might glean out of that conversation. I had them recently, and I'm kind of adding a little bit because I know Rick is coming back to ask more questions in a minute. Okay, but I had a recent interaction where they were just shopping for stuff, but one of the players started asking leading questions about finding like back alley black market type items, and I had no intention of seeding anything there, but he started asking those questions, and all of a sudden it became a valuable role-playing interaction because I was able to throw in a quest plot hook, like if you do this and talk to this person, then they'll give you work and they'll give you access to someone they know that can get you that type of information, and just kind of gave them a path to what they want.
I wonder who that was.
You know it's Mirth.
Huh?
You know it's Mirth.
It's Mirth. Or Angus.
Anyway.
That could have been a...
Oh, it was 100% Mirth.
It's always Mirth. So I have another question here, and I got a list of questions sent in by some people.
Awesome.
Yeah. This one's a little trickier to answer because I do watch Izzy and I do watch Mark, and I've started to watch Diz. And I know everybody in Mark's circle, so I know how he handles this. So this is kind of a leading question. So we'll get your short one out of the way real quick. Your short answer out of the way real quick. How do you deal with disputes at the table about rules or character choices for people arguing about what to do next?
I make a ruling, and if they don't agree with it, I will usually be like, well, let's do this for now and we can discuss it later. There have been times where people have been arguing with where it's gotten to the point where they've been interrupting, and I've literally stopped the game and been like, you need to stop interrupting me and everybody else right now and focus up, because everybody needs to have an opportunity to share the floor, so please stop interrupting each other. And I've kind of laid it down. So you just have to kind of, it's hard when it's a group of your friends, and it's hard when it's even hard when it's a group of your clients, but just being like, putting your foot down and being like, look, this is the ruling for now. If I'm wrong, we'll change it later.
Yeah. Diz, what about you?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I try to not. You really don't want to say no, or stop it, or be really harsh unless you just have to. But most of the times you can resolve things just by saying, okay, well, I don't really know the answer to this, because you just have to admit, sometimes you don't know, but here's what we're going to do for now. And it may be in the favor of them, it may be in the favor of the DM, but you roll with that. I try to go with what I think is the most fair, and then I research it later, and I usually circle back to that player or players and tell them, here's what I found after I researched everything. That this was the wrong call, but we still had fun with it. And in those moments, they actually see that you have gone out of your way to try to make sure that they had a good time. So a lot of times, unless people are just jerks, then they will see that you're trying to go out of your way and have everybody have a good time, and the next time it happens, they might be a little more understanding. I've never had any total breakdowns at a table where they've just all out, just been arguing at each other or going at each other. I have had a little back and forth chatter, and I have had to put my foot down, but I don't like to do that. But I mean, sometimes you have to. And like Mark said, you just have to let them understand that everybody is trying to have fun, and that what they're doing is interrupting that. And we can talk about it later if there is a dispute, but right now, let's just continue on and finish having our fun moment. So
You're up.
Yeah. We haven't had really any of that, again, it's the three ladies on the stream are all very, very good friends of mine. Again, 30 something years. And then there's my husband, and then his two really, really good friends. And there haven't been any issues. The only thing that I would say does happen sometimes, and it happened more when we were playing in person, just because I think of like us being together, was people having ideas of how other people should play, and so saying like, why are you doing that? Don't do that. Oh my god, you should be doing this instead. Why? And it was like, what are you doing? That's what I would say to whoever it was. It was like, oh, I'm gonna go do this thing. Wait, why are you doing that? And I was like, nope. What are you doing? What is your character doing? Don't worry about what anybody else is saying, because like, you're all playing your own characters. Nobody knows your character's backstory on purpose. We hid it. Like, there's all these revelations that are going to come out. Your character would do a certain thing a certain way, and this other person's character would not. So, like, what are you doing? And usually, especially, would be in combat situations or like a tactical, like, we're going to sneak over here kind of. And maybe somebody would say, like, oh my God, why are they doing it? Like, quick, what are you doing? Don't let that stop you. But we haven't had too much other than that. Every once in a while I might say, like, this is what we're going to go with, and I'll research it later, and if I have to retcon something, like, that's really, really bad, because I don't know all the rules, then we'll do that. But otherwise, typically we just kind of like, I make a call and we go with it. I'll do research later, just say, okay, next time and going forward we'll do it this way. But most of the time they're level 4, so most of what has happened is not super detrimental anyway if a mistake has been made. But yeah, we haven't had any problems yet.
I've actually had both extremes. So my Saturday night game that I DM for my friends is our biggest problem is off target, off topic. Something will come up, or somebody will make a comment, and then it's 15 minutes of trying to herd them back to the game itself, as opposed to, let's come back and play some more. We only have till like 2 a.m. I mean, we start at 6. It's a big thing for us. We go over to my friend Robert's house. Robert cooks us dinner. Huge carnivores, and we sit down and we BS and we, catch up because we haven't seen each other for 2 weeks. And then probably about 8:30, 9 o'clock, about 8 o'clock, I start, okay, let's start, I start talking about the game to try to bring it towards D&D, and then I can start to herd them into the game. And then I have been, as you know, my name is the Loophole King. I am what most people would consider a borderline rules lawyer. But strictly in the sense that I believe that if you're going to use a rule set, then it should be done the exact same way for everybody, for the players and for the monsters. I'm a big fan. If you have it, the monsters have it. If the monsters have it, you can have it. With some exceptions. You're not going to have dragon intelligence from like 2nd edition when it was like godlike and just those kind of things. But the basic stuff. If it's charging rules, then everybody uses the same charging rules. Not there's charging rules for the PCs, and then the bugbears get to do something different because the DM wants them to do something different. Now, yeah, there's leeway with that too, but there's a for me it's kind of because of my disability, I like to have a kind of a constant, right? I like to know that, okay, here's the rule set we're using. We're going to keep using this rule set. And I think that's also really good for your players as a DM, that when you say, here's the rule, this is what the rule is, and this is the rule for everybody, not just you guys, but oh, hi honey. The wife's sneaking in to go to sleep. So yeah, I've had people who wanted to argue, and luckily for me, I'm a type A personality, and I'm kind of a big guy, so if I say that's enough, a lot of times it becomes enough. So I can get loud. I was in the service. I've got 6 kids. I'm a judge for magic, so I have to yell loud enough that 1,000 people in a room can hear me. So yes, if I raise my voice, you are going to notice. I'm going to get the point across. But I've only had to do that one. I've only had one player that really just didn't, and I don't think they wanted to play, right? I think they wanted to hang out, and they were just there to hang out, and then, that was super disruptive for the other players who wanted to play. So that was like, yeah, you're welcome to come over and hang out, but once the game starts, either be quiet or find something else to do. And like Diz said, you just be honest with them. I think that's the biggest thing is be honest with your players. And now I'm going to ask what I think is a funny question. What is what is the worst experience you've had as a DM in terms of your players not getting the hint from an NPC? Like, there's an NPC that's got a quest that it's tied to your plot, and they just kind of like, they don't ask any questions of him. They're just like, yeah, cool, bye, see ya, and they're just off on their own. We'll start with Iz. Or what would you do if they did that? I don't know. In 6 months, I think you probably had that once or twice where they just kind of bypass your plot line and are like, see ya.
Yeah, I've had it happen. It wasn't like, man, I can't remember the specifics, but I usually try to have a backup plan that's not forcing it. I mean, so also my caveat is that I'm doing a module where there's like a path to go down. There have been some times where I've had to just kind of throw another thing in there. One thing that happened fairly recently was, so Avedon, my friend Lauren, plays a tiefling who Lenithon, the blue dragon, has taken a shining to, and they were out in the caravan, and I had like randomly in the moment decided that Lenithon was going to stop by and just like chat with Avedon out in the woods, and they were heading north on their journey, and so I had Lenithon like send Avedon a message, a sending like or a message or whatever, a message straight to her. And I said something about her being like a alabaster princess or something, and to meet me in the north, and I meant like right now, but she didn't get it, and so I'm like watching her face on the stream, and she's like, oh, she's writing some notes, and I'm like, so we kept going, and then another minute went by, and I'm like, you hear again a voice say, come meet me to the north, and she's like, all right, I get it. And so we're heading north, and I was like, you get the impression that she means right now, because I was like, it's not clicking.
Knock knock, hello.
Right. And I'm like, well, that was vague, I guess. So I was just like, you just get the impression that you should probably go right now. She's waiting for you in the woods, like 100 feet away. So please go. It wasn't integral to the storyline. It was a thing I just randomly decided was going to happen. But I'm like, if she doesn't do it right now, then what I just said is completely meaningless because the dragon is in the woods right now. So, I always have like a backup plan to try to make something work. But in that moment, I was just like, go, because there was no other way to get it done. But whatever.
What about you, Diz?
So I spent the better part of a week preparing a whole castle, and with all kinds of treasures and NPCs and all kinds of things, and they snuck through some back stairs and just went all the way through the castle, avoiding everything. And I just let it happen because that's what they wanted to do. I guess at some point I've made them so paranoid of traps and things that they just wanted to do this. So I just let them continue on, to the, I guess, the meat of the story. without going through all of the, jumping through the hoops. But other situations, I usually keep some side quests in my back pocket, just so I can kind of throw in there, if they wander off the path and I really need them back over here, I'll throw something in there, and a lot of times that's worked in directing them back. I try not to railroad them too much, but
Right.
if it's a very important point, sometimes you might try to steer them in that direction.
How about you, Mark? I know your answer. I've been on the receiving end of your answer.
Well, you tell me what my answer is, and then I'll tell you if you're right or not. How about we play that game if you know my answer already? Go ahead. You tell them what I do, and then I'll tell you if you're right.
Mark fakes it. He is a master of faking things that are not supposed to be happening, but are happening.
My role playing, my dungeon master style and my preparation style has evolved a lot over the last I don't know 20 something years of running D&D. I used to be a very heavy preparer, and you can ask my wife this. When we first started, it was like 6-7 years ago when we first started dating. There were times where she would come over to hang out with me, and I would literally be at my computer for like 3 or 4 hours, sitting in the same room as her, preparing a game. And I'm like, "Are you sure you're okay with me doing this?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm just happy to be here hanging out with you." Now, if I spend 3 or 4 hours preparing a session without talking to her in the room, she's like, "Are you going to be done yet?" Anyway, my preparation style has changed. So I used to heavily prepare my sessions and go point by point, different events that were going to happen, describing everything, having all these stats set up, everything like that. And my preparation style has changed heavily to a much more improvisational style. So I keep a bunch of notes on different things that I think are important without having a lot of specifics planned out. If they're going somewhere that I know they're going there and they're exploring a specific area, I will have a map, and I will have notes on what is on that map. That's fine. But like, to get them to go on a specific quest in a specific direction and have like an NPC that's a quest giver, I try not to bottleneck myself like that anymore. I have descriptions of my NPCs and what their goals are. I have lists of information that the players need to get, but I don't connect specific information to specific NPCs. If I need them to find out that information, they're going to find out that information wherever it makes sense in the moment in the game. They will find it out. And by having it that way, it means that they can hear it from an NPC, they can find it on a piece of paper, they can
Overhear
get
in a bar.
overhear in a bar, get a sending from another NPC they already know. I can feed that information to them however is most convenient in the story at the moment. And so, and I always have more plans than they can handle. And I don't flesh out those plans fully. I just have the seeds of those plans. I know that this thing is going on in the world, this thing's going on in the world, this thing's going on in the world, this thing's going on in the world. And so, depending on the direction they're going, I can seed any one of those events with just a tidbit of information that's going to make them go, "Oh, we should go look into that."
Yeah.
And then I can prepare it later because I know which direction they're going in now, and I can go prepare that at another time. So yeah, Rick is completely right. I fake it, but and so like it's hard for me to answer that question because it's been like 6 or 7 years since I've been in a situation where something like that happens. Although I will say in our current game, the situation with the NPC Trust, that in the game that Rick is in, he has been that he literally at one point in the conversation had to stop the party and be like, "Can we focus on what we're talking about?" and like run down the list of what the party has told him that they need to do. They got so off topic that they
to be
So,
fair, those kind of role playing things are yes, you were totally right. it wasn't my character per se. It was more of Mirth and.
That the point is like
Yeah,
that's the closest I could come to in an example where this character is trying to give them information that they need and they absolutely refuse to take it.
No, we were not.
At all.
Yeah, we were quite content to talk for probably another 15, 20 minutes about whether rain is magic or not. Oh yeah, we would have
It's
gone
true.
on for a while. It's,
That's true.
so we're right at the hour mark, so we are going to go ahead and let you guys ask me a question that you would like to know about my role-playing style or my DMing style. And we'll start with Diz. Is there anything you'd like to know about the way I do things?
Let me think. How do you build NPCs?
NPCs for me are a special sort of character. So I approach them the same way I do when I'm building my own characters. I think about where they came from, who the person is before I pick a class or anything like that. I pick a person that an archetype, if you will, of the person that's doing a thing. Let's say it's the mastermind behind the evil takeover, right? Well, why is he doing this, right? Well, who is this person? Where did he start out from? How did he get here? And then I fill in all the cool D&D details of what level is he, what class is he, and that kind of thing. But I want to know. I'm always more interested in the person that I'm going to be playing as the NPC than their stats at any point. That's just for me. I think that's more. It's better for the players. Because when you start making your NPCs, like the game that I'm running for Mark right now, I probably have 15 NPCs already thought about. And I have their motivation. But what the characters are going to do over time is going to change how they react to what their goals are. So the person that I have written down right now, the notes I have about the big bad right now, can change. And if you're not willing, I've seen DMs that are not willing to make a change to their overarching plot based on what the characters do. And I think or change their NPCs. Like, this guy is doing this because this reason. Well, yeah, but that reason doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, but that's why he's doing it. Yeah, but it doesn't exist anymore. So you run into those problems, and then it doesn't become believable to the players when they run into the NPC, because they're like, oh yeah, well, you're mad about this. Well, yeah, well, we took care of that like 6 months ago. So that's how I approach them. I think of them as people who inhabit the world, and they're going to cross paths with. They may cross paths with these characters, and if they do, does the story the characters are being told and the story this NPC has, are they the same? Do they fit in the same world? And if they do, I'm happy about it. If they don't, then I've made a mistake as a DM about the way this NPC should be played. What about you, Mark?
Question for you.
Yeah. I'm not giving any spoilers, so don't ask.
That's I gotta think of a good one.
I'll go to
and I was too busy listening to your answer about the NPCs to actually come up with a question.
Yeah.
I would ask, what is your take on the divvying up or giving out of magic items as far as pace over the course of a campaign and power level? How do you feel about that? What do you kind of how do you kind of handle that?
So I'm a middle of the road kind of DM when it comes to those. My thought process behind giving out magic items is twofold. One, is it appropriate for the characters to have this item at this level? And 2, will it overpower the game in the next 5 sessions? Like I kind of had like 3 or 4 sessions or so, 5 sessions. So I kind of know what's going to happen. So if I give you the flame tongue, is that going to cause problems? Am I going to have to make adjustments further down the road because you're going to gain a level, but the party's going to gain 2 levels before they reach this point. Now I've given this ranger a flame tongue, and he's going to gain the ability to do more damage when he hits 10th level. Plus, I've already gauged it for these characters. Now I have to go back and change a bunch of stuff, and a lot of times it is. You really have to think about what the magic item is going to do to your campaign. Not just the players, is it appropriate for the players to have, but what does that item do inside your campaign? And I'm also more cognizant from being a player at the equal distribution of loot amongst the party. And I try to make sure that while I do use random loot tables, I do have a tendency to re-roll if it's like, oh, good, the last 3 things are all for the cleric. Well, that's cool, but if the next time I roll and the next 2 things are also for the cleric, I'll just re-roll, right? I'm just going to find something else and see if that fits. And I'm not above picking magic items. And I'm also a big fan of crafting personal magic items, as you can attest to. I just gave everybody in the party from Sunday a new magic item at first level. I'm not above doing things like that if it progresses the story and if they can be crafted in a way that doesn't break the game in the long term. We talked last week when Izzy was on. I have 2 magic items I won't give away, and those are the Talisman of Ultimate Evil and Ultimate Good. I think those are the worst crafted magic items in D&D, and they have been since they were created the first time. They're just not.
By the way, I need to step in because of the conversation that was going on about magic items last week, and I have to say that you can properly utilize the deck of many things in a game. Most people don't, but you can. I'm just gonna say that. I'm not gonna say anything else.
I happen to love the deck of many things. I have the record in my group. I drew 26 times consecutively without getting killed. I have 11 witnesses. And we used an actual deck of cards, so it wasn't just randomly rolling dice or anything. I drew from the deck.
Nice.
Granted, I lost a bunch of fortunes here and there, but I think I ended up at the very end. I think I ended up with a couple of castles, like 3 or 4 henchmen. I defeated death 3 or 4 times. I gained like 6 levels. It was absurd. I kept drawing the card that says you get more draws. So I would have to take, because I said I was going to like draw like 6. And they were like, wow, 6. And then the first 2 I drew were you gain 1d4 more draws that you have to take. And I was like, crap. And I rolled a 4 and a 3. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm at 13. And I just keep drawing these things. Yeah, so it was awesome. But yeah, for magic items, like I said, I don't mind crafting. I like crafting magic items personally for players. That's my favorite. Because
I agree with that.
They're giving somebody something that is theirs, right? Like it's theirs, and their character's the only one in the whole, the whole universe of where you guys are playing that has one. The amount of stuff, the amount of role playing. Well, like what happened last night on Mark's stream with Mirth giving up, doing that. That was just, it was heart wrenching, right? It was heart wrenching to have this item that he had that was part of his backstory that he gave up for something else. And it's like, as a player, I'm like, holy crap, what's he doing? But my character doesn't understand that, so it was like, yeah, cool, whatever, right? But as a player, I'm like, holy shit, dude, And it was a huge moment for everybody watching, and I love that kind of stuff. That's my favorite. What about you, Iz?
So I'd say I've been kind of struggling with ending strong as a concept. I know, so I've heard Sly Flourish and Matt Colville and other people that I've watched or listened to who say like start a session strong and end it strong. So like I've had so many sessions where I'm like, oh, I should have ended this 5 minutes ago, and now we're continuing on and on and on, and everyone's very tired and it's midnight and Lauren needs to go work on the farm in the morning. Like, so how do you end?
How do you know where the right
Or
spot
like,
is?
Yeah, like when do you stop? How do you know when to stop? I know after it's happened.
Right. My personal preference is right before, like the easiest way to start learning how to do that is before they open the door. That's how I started to find those spots, is right before the characters open a door. Regardless of what it could be a broom closet. The characters don't know that, right?
Right.
The players don't know what's behind it. They're getting ready to open the door. They've checked for traps. They check for locks. And you're like, you know what? This is a good place for us to stop tonight. And they're all like, well, why is she stopping? What's behind the door? Right? And they'll spend the entire week thinking about, talking about what's behind that door. And you open the door and it's a broom closet, right? There's nothing in it. But the anticipation of showing up for that next session is what you want. It's not about, this big crescendo of action. It's about maintaining that drive for your players to want to be there next week. And it could be something as simple as, they open the door and there's a creature, and you describe the creature, and then you say, and how you guys respond, we'll find out next week. Those kinds of little, but start off, just pick a door or pick a like, we're going to go into the bar. Okay, they go into the bar, you describe the bar, and then end the scene and just stop. And you're like, well, why did she stop? Because your players will always assume that you are up to something because you're the DM. They will always assume that you have something hidden that's going to go so horribly wrong for them that it's coming up for them. Go ahead, Mark.
99% of the time, they're right.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of times, but if you keep them on their toes, those kinds of things, they'll get to anticipate that. Okay, maybe she just did it for, because we needed the industry. Maybe she did it because she needed, Sometimes I do it because I have no idea what's coming next. Like it's late and I'm like, I don't know how to put these NPCs together coherently because I did not expect them to be at the bar this early. They sidetracked something and they, ducked in here and then they went over here. Like Diz was saying about the castle. You planned for what, 2 hours of them just going through the castle, and they were like, see ya. So you have to pick a spot. It's like, okay, you burst into the room, you see all this, and we'll see you next week.
Right.
And they're like, oh, must be something big. And you're going, holy shit, I had no idea they were going to do that. Okay, it gives you time to get your breath together, because a lot of your players assume that especially those of us who don't play out of a book, right? That you've written your story. Like, I've got a giant stack of notebooks. They think that every DM's got a giant stack of notebooks that has every contingency plan, that anything they'll ever do, and 3,000 NPCs, one for every person they're going to randomly meet in every city, and that's not the case.
Right.
So if you run into a situation where you just don't know, take a break, or end the session a little early. Now, I'm a big fan of, sure, we're supposed to play for 4 hours, but we're playing for 3.5 today. I'm okay with that, because as long as your audience, like, especially since we're all streaming, as long as your audience and your players want to show back up for the next one, you've done your job. That's really all you want as a DM, is to have your players excited to show up the next day, and have your viewers want to see what happens when they kick open that door. And then when they kick open the door, it's a broom closet. It's hilarious, because everybody's like, and they've been thinking about it. It's like, okay, so they stack up behind the door like a SWAT team, right? And the paladin's up front with his shield, and the barbarian's got his axe raised, and the rogue is like, I got my bone drawn, and the wizard's like, okay, I'm gonna hold my action, and the second I see something, I'm gonna shoot it with a firebolt. And you spring open the door, and you see 6 brooms and a bucket.
Right.
And they're
I
like,
think maybe that's been my problem is that I've tried to think of like what's this epic thing that's going to happen when they start the next session,
Yeah.
like every time, and it doesn't, necessarily need
doesn't
to
have
be
to.
that way.
yeah, go ahead,
Yeah.
Mark.
I also am a huge proponent of Sly Flourish's stuff. My preparation style is very much Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. I use it a lot, especially when I'm preparing for 6 games a week. You have to streamline your preparation style. You have to. And his advice about the strong start is great for a lot of for a lot of things. It's not great for everything. There are times where my players are traveling somewhere and I know the next session is going to be them arriving. Sometimes the strong start is that something happens as soon as they arrive, right? That's the strong start. But there are also times where my players, like, the strong start is you meet up for breakfast. Like,
Yeah.
that's the strong start of my adventure. One of my recent adventures was that it came to a concluding point that was a really big revelation and important point, and they needed to discuss the ramifications of that. So the strong start the next episode was just, you've taken a long rest, you get up the next day, and you have all of this new information, and you need to sit around your campfire and discuss what you're going to. And that was the strong start, because you can't, like, sometimes starting just has to be of the adventure, and you have to know what the introduction. When it comes to a strong end, that's a feel thing. You get used to it, and I know for me, I try to take cues from like TV shows, right? Most TV shows, their episodes end on either a revelation, a resolution, or a cliffhanger. Right? And so if you try to find something in your adventure where it's like, okay, they've concluded this adventure, then give them a wrap up. Like, think through it narratively. Just be like, you guys slay the last orc, you get back to the caravan, you're exhausted from the day's trip, from confronting these orcs. You get back and you're ready to just kind of plop down and take a rest for the night after that huge battle, and you all settle into your beds, and the thoughts of what has happened throughout this day are going through your mind, and we'll end it there with you guys pondering what exactly just happened and what that's going to mean going forward. And leaving it like that resolves everything, but still gives them this taste of like, I wonder what is going to happen going forward. So, like, sometimes you just have to have a line or two to use to kind of wrap things up and tie up a nice little bow, like that conclusion, like that concluding sentence at the end of a paper, or at the end of a book, or at the end of a chapter. It's just something that leaves them with a sense of wondering what's coming next and knowing that what's happened.
What about you, Diz?
So I was thinking, a lot of those things you guys have used, I've used as well. It's good to end on a suspense moment for the next time to keep them, antsy for the next one. I also like ending on, if there's a touching moment, a heartfelt moment, just concluding on, the sonnet there as you fade off into the dark and the camera pans away up to the moon or something, and you leave them with a sweet moment. Or even like, say they're the champions of a city, they've done something great, and there's a big parade. You end with that high of them being celebrated, and the next time when you come in, somebody sneaks up beside them and whispers something just dreadful in their ear, and they realize this high moment is all of a sudden dipped into this other low moment. So I think I'm still learning as well, but you just have to have a few of those moments that and sometimes I've had to end with just it wasn't an exciting moment or anything. It's just like, okay, well,
You take a
this
long
is
rest.
concluded.
See you next week.
You take a long rest. See you next week.
It can't always be great, so
Right.
Yeah, you're gonna have times where it doesn't.
Whenever it's one of those, like I said, whenever it's one of those moments where it's just like, well, we're going to end it here, I try to have some kind of like again, I try to have some kind of little blurb of like a concluding statement about the adventure that sums things up, that leaves the important things fresh in their mind for the next time. And so even if it's one of those moments, like you said, where it's just like, well, I guess you're taking a short rest and there's nothing left to do tonight, so we're going to be done. Try to use that moment to plant a seed about something important that gets them thinking for next week.
Or
And this
preface
is one of those learning moments, so I'm going to take that. I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
So.
Or you can preface before you, or instead of, I like to do it before I do that. Mark does his after. I like to do mine before, where it's, you know, they're going to take on a short rest, like the short rest. The short rest is one of a DM's nightmare to try to end or do something with, because it's like, it's an hour. What are you doing an hour? And then you have to wait for 45 minutes for an actual hour in real time for them to describe what they're doing in a short rest. So a lot of times it becomes, you know, so you guys just get done fighting. Like Mark said, you do a little conclusion and then you say, okay, as you guys, you know, sink into the floor, you know, exhausted from this battle, wounded, you know, licking your wounds, and you start to, you know, you start to pass around the hardtack, and you start to think about, you know, and you know, player A, you know, Bob starts to, you know, do his medicine on everybody, to, you know, goes around, makes the rounds, making sure everybody feels good. You guys think, you know, if this is really where you need to be, right? You know, give them some sort of like, what do you mean if this is where I want to be? Right? Like, give them some sort of like, did we make a mistake? Did we go down a wrong door? Did we forget something? You know, your players will always assume the worst. And if you can keep them assuming the worst, then that's great. Because when it's not the worst, they're super excited. Like, when they overcome something, they're super excited. And if it is the worst, they you know, it kind of pads that a little bit, so it's not so devastating. And sometimes you just want to lie to them. I'm a firm believer of lying to your players for the story. I don't lie to the players about rolling dice or anything like that. I never cheat the dice. And I'm a big fan, and I'm a big proponent of DMs should never fudge dice. I don't think is bad. Yeah, I don't think DMs should ever fudge the dice. I find that reprehensible, personally, because I think it takes the realism out of combat. I think it takes the realism out of the rolls, because the players can't fudge the dice. Like, you can see their dice, and I think it's I think it's part of that social contract where I'm going to be straight with you, you be straight with me, right? So if I roll and it's a crit, it's a crit. You're taking the damage. Sorry about your luck. You know, if your player gets killed, I don't go out of my way to kill players, but I don't fudge rolls to make the monsters better, and I don't fudge rolls to keep the monsters alive. Like, if the monster rolls a 2 on his saving throw, he's gone. So I don't believe in fudging rolls ever, but I do believe in lying to your players a lot. And I say that as a storyteller, you want them to always be thinking about what's coming or what has happened in a way that progresses the story. And I'm just saying, don't lie to them. Say, nope, door's not. You know, don't tell them every door is not trapped and then kill them with doors that are trapped. I'm saying, you know, when you can leave them on a cliffhanger that you've just made up on the spot, like we were just saying, is for your, like, the short rest is like, you know, the cleric is busy tending to your wounds, you know, and some of you are having thoughts of, why are we down here? What am I really supposed to be? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And get your players to start thinking about, well, oh, Cicada has a good question. What about when the monsters are massacring your players? I never feel sorry for players who don't learn to run. Running away is an option. It is always an option.
Speaking of, my 4-year-old has woken up and is having a bit of a meltdown.
Oh.
So I think I have to run.
Oh, that's okay. Believe me.
Except
I totally
towards
understand.
the danger.
Run towards the danger.
Thank you for having me on. And I'll be streaming on DM prep for my session tomorrow night, like 9 p.m. Eastern. But
Well, as soon as
I'll
I
be
get,
back here next week.
all right, I will see you next week. Thanks, Iz.
Thank you.
Good night, Iz.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, be sure to go see Izzy's.
Speak.
I really like how you
Go.
guys describe that, because the way you're thinking about concluding the session is more like a writer would end a chapter. And sometimes I think I get stuck in the mode of being a game master, a dungeon master, and playing the game. And, sometimes I forget that, I'm also a writer when I'm doing this. So I need to think of it like that. So
Yeah.
My perspective on D&D is that I've done a good job as a game master when I get my players to feel something. When they have a genuine emotional response to a situation, I am doing my job, because that's when they're really invested in their characters, and that's when they're really invested in the story.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that has served me well in determining how to do certain things in certain moments. I think it's important that I think concluding your session well is important, and I don't think concluding your session well always means having to have something crazy happen.
Right.
Like you said, ending on a moment is important, but you set the scene. As a DM, your job is to set the scene, and you usually think of that in the form of you come into this location and you describe the location,
Yeah.
right? Or you describe what's happening at the beginning of an adventure. But sometimes setting a scene is what the resolution is closing things out, is that last moment. And I really learned this from my first real game master. And I say that because I played a lot in high school and we goofed around, you know what I mean? But like in college, I played my first game that was really an actual character-driven story-based role-playing game. And when we first started playing, my dungeon master set the scene by saying the camera pans down over the water and you watch as it glides over the water, and in the distance you see a ship, and it slowly closes in on that ship until you're looking at the deck of the ship, and all of a sudden you're setting the scene like a movie, and you can picture that happening in your head. You know exactly what that looks like in your head. And I was like, this is so different than anything I've done before. And that really kind of changed the way I thought about the type of games I wanted to play, right? I think you can see that. Rick can attest to this, as he's watched a lot of my streams. You can see that difference in some of my streams. And you can see the difference between groups where we're still figuring things out as a group dynamic. We're still in the nitty-gritty mechanical part of D&D. And then there are groups that they have developed a group dynamic, a group personality, that the party has a personality of its own. And the types of stories you tell with those two different types of parties are very different. And if you looked at some of the games if you looked at the game I played Monday night and you looked at the game I played Tuesday night this week, you would see those differences, because the game I played Monday night, we had two brand new players in the party, and so it was very grindy with people like trying to figure out Roll20, figure out who their characters were, and like how they mesh mechanically as a party, and they got thrown right into combat, and it was a lot of how does this work, how does that work, and we were playing the game of D&D. And then last night, the end of the session, there was a lot of narrative, and even though mechanical things were happening, it was all described in a cinematic way. And when I asked what was happening, they would tell me what they were doing, and then I would tell them what to roll to see if it worked or not. There were no rounds. There were no rounds. There were no mechanics involved. It was simply, this person's sliding off the edge of this icy precipice. They're going to fall. What are you doing? And they tell me what they're doing. I'm like, okay, roll that. And what are you doing? I'm doing this. Okay, roll that. And it was like fast paced, like boom, boom, boom. And my style of DMing in that moment shifted to a much more rapid pace. This is happening. What are you doing? This is happening. What are you doing? This is happening. What are you doing? Because because I was trying to create that narrative feeling of
Impending danger.
urgency of somebody's going to die, and so like
Not just one
you know,
person. There was
anyways.
a
Anxiety.
couple of them. There was a couple
Yeah.
of them that were going to die.
because I wanted them to feel something. I didn't
Yeah.
care about the mechanics. I wanted them to feel something in that moment.
Yeah, that's the difference. And like I said, I've played in 2 of Mark's campaigns, and the one thing that I can tell you from personal experience is that even though that I made it kind of a joke about him kind of winging it and making shit up as he goes, but as a DM, being able to improv is probably the most important thing you can learn as a DM. That everything can change on a moment's notice, and the ability to adapt to that without your players knowing it makes you a good DM. That's for me, that's the key to being a good DM. I've had sessions with the guys over the past year. We've been playing a whole campaign, and I have made probably half of that shit up. We're not running a book adventure. It's not.
Oh yeah.
It's just, and they're like, well, we're going to go here. And I'm like,
Oh yeah.
okay, this is what it looks like. And this just randomly making crap up as we go. And they're like, dude, that was great. Dude, I love this session. I'm like, I had no idea what we were doing when I sat down tonight.
Can either of you honestly tell me that you don't spend at least 50 to 75% of every adventure pulling shit out of your ass? Can you tell me that that's not true as a dungeon master?
I can neither confirm or deny that. So, just in case any of my players are watching.
Very nice.
I would go about 50% because, like I said, and like you do, there's preparation that goes into thinking about what's going to happen next, but the specifics are just not there. There's no way to there's no way to plan on 6 people. Like I was DMing for a group of 9 at one point. There's no way you can calculate.
You can try.
What 9 people are going to do in any given situation. And I know most of them for almost 30 years, and I still couldn't tell you what they were going to do if I said, here's X monster, you're playing a wizard, what do you cast? I might get it right 50% of the time. Like that's, so the ability to I tell everyone, and I think this is here's a good question. I want to end on this question. This question has been asked multiple times of multiple GMs. It's been talked to death, but it is kind of relevant for what we're discussing.
Okay.
Since the advent of Critical Role gaining its supremacy as the leading or one of the leading role-playing YouTube channels, right, on Geek and Sundry. Little shout out to Geek and Sundry. Good job, guys. Yeah, love you guys.
I think they're contractually obligated to give us a shout out now based on that.
Yeah, it's way to go, Critical Role. That's and I dislike the phrase, but I'm going to use it because everybody knows what you're talking about when you say it. The Matt Mercer effect on D&D, where it's people think that they have to live up to that kind of and Izzy alluded to it earlier about watching these other DMs and trying to copy their styles and learn from them. Learning is good, but I think that for me, the Matt Mercer effect has been, I see it less in my own personal style because I've been playing longer than a lot, but I think a lot of newer DMs watch Matt or watch Sly or watch some of these other DMs and say, oh, I have to do that. Like my game has to look exactly like that. And my question is to you, Diz, how do you feel about that? Do you think that's good for the, where's that, people come down on both sides of that. I personally think that it's good for a good starting point for new DMs to want to emulate someone like Matt because he's a great DM. There's
Yeah.
nobody's going to say that he sucks as a DM. There's no way you can. There's no way you can say that, or Sly or any of these other ones. But I think it's a good starting point so people can just like, okay, it's like driving a new car. You're like, you pick up the instruction manual, you're driving the new car, and then eventually the seat starts to fit the way you want it. And you get the seat adjusted right, and the mirrors are adjusted right, and you kind of sink into your own. And I think that's good for newer DMs to want to emulate. It's just like any other professional athlete. You grow up, you want to be like Troy Aikman or Brett Favre or Concepcion in baseball, or any kind of Pele in soccer. Like you have to have something to aspire to, and then you find your own way. So what do you think, Diz?
What I think is, I DM'd for a while and I didn't have a lot of success. I couldn't keep players coming back and stuff like this. Is even before we were streaming or anything. I couldn't keep players interested and stuff like that. And then I took a little break and came back and tried it again. And I started watching Critical Role, and I saw how he really jumped into the characters. And I'm like, I can do that. I've acted before, nothing big and fancy or not on screen, but I've acted in plays and stuff like that when I was younger. I can be these characters, and I really took it as motivation rather than just trying to copy him, because I knew instantly he is a professional.
Right.
And I cannot be this good unless I worked on it for years and years and years and made it just my life's goal. And I still might not be that good, but I took inspiration from it. And just like when I would play basketball when I was younger, I would watch Michael Jordan, and I couldn't do what he does, but I would try to take elements of what he did and kind of copy them, kind of meld them into my own game. And that's what I do with the DMing. Just like from you guys tonight, I've learned a handful of things that I want to just take back and try to incorporate into what I'm already doing, and just try to tweak it and make it a little bit better. And so I feel that it's good. And I've met Matt Mercer. I got to meet him in person. He's the nicest guy. Came around the table, put his arm around me, took a picture. He had to take a phone call because his father-in-law had just called him. Yeah. So I stood there and listened to the conversation. I mean, he was just the nicest guy, and he will go out of his way to tell people the same thing, that you should do the best you can, but you're not a professional like that, so you might not be able to do the things that they do. So
right.
And I've seen other DMs as well, and I try to take them as inspiration rather than trying to lock in and say, I have to be this good.
Right. What about you, Mark?
So I will go down two roads with this question. The practical one of my experience is that I will tell you I've watched about 30 minutes of Critical Role. It's in total. And I've listened to about 2 podcasts worth of Vox Machina, not because I don't like it, but because of time constraints and the fact that number one is time constraints. And so I have not seen a personal impact from that stuff. And again, my experience has been with improvisational role-playing games for a long time, because that's was my bread and butter in college, and that's what I emulated going forward because I liked it. And that was pre-Critical Role. And so doing the voices and getting into character and setting a scene and telling a story is something that I learned from experience through play, as opposed to seeing it somewhere. And I adopted that for myself. And I've heard from players like, oh, these are things that Critical Role does, and I'm like, that's cool, but we're not Critical Role.
Right.
We're just gonna play D&D, and we're gonna have fun, and that's the most important thing, is that we're having fun. If we're having fun, that's great. And I think that on a theoretical level, I think the Critical Role effect has been great, because I think it has drawn a much broader range of people into the game. And it opened it up for a mainstream audience because it wasn't until after Critical Role that you started seeing it in things like sitcoms and television, and people really seeing it as something that can be positive and good. And between a combination of television exposure and Critical Role and the advent of 5th edition and its accessibility, we've had this explosion of Dungeons and Dragons players and accessibility to the game, and I think that's amazing. As far as Dungeon Masters are concerned, I think that Critical Role has been both a powerful, motivating, and inspirational factor, and also a discouraging factor for people who have said, I can't do something.
Right.
I think the pendulum has swung a little bit, and I think you can call it something like the Matt Colville effect, which is Matt Colville went on YouTube and said, anybody can be a dungeon master. Let me show you how. And I think that the reason why those videos of his of anybody can be a dungeon master, let me show you how, I think the reason that those exploded in popularity the way they did at the time that they did was because people needed to hear that as new dungeon masters. People needed to hear, like, I don't have to be Matt Colville. I can just get my friends together tonight and grab a bunch of pre-made characters and draw a dungeon on a piece of graph paper, and we can start playing D&D. And the fact is, you can do that. That's amazing. And you're gonna suck, and your friends are gonna suck, and you're gonna sit down and you're gonna have fun, and you're going to laugh about it, and you're going to come back the next week and you're going to do it a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better, and you're going to learn things and learn things and learn things. And that's the amazing thing about D&D, is that you can have adventures in the way that Critical Role does, that are a bunch of people who are professional voice actors doing these voices and characters and having fun that way, and you can be a bunch of goofy 13-year-olds who are sitting around your mom's basement eating Funyuns and drinking Mountain Dew and goofing around
jokes.
and telling dick and fart jokes and have fun playing D&D that way. And there is no wrong way to play D&D, and there is no wrong way to Dungeon Master D&D. And I think that and so the theoretical aspect of it is that the good thing is that Critical Role has created exposure. The bad thing is that it can create an intimidating factor, but I think enough people, like including Matt Mercer himself and other dungeon masters who have a viral voice out there on the internet, have come out to say, it's okay, you don't have to be Matt Mercer.
Right.
And I think the balancing voices that are out there have created this environment where the game just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing, and there's more and more people. I mean, hell, like Izzy was saying, with the COVID, with everything going on with COVID-19, Dungeons and Dragons has been a huge way for people to connect with each other, to the point that Wizards has put free stuff out there to utilize. Roll20 has expanded what its capabilities are to have more people on there playing, and so has every other platform, because it's a way that we're connecting as people, and the game has exploded even more. It wouldn't be like that without. I think it wouldn't be like that without Critical Role existing.
Right.
I think that's taken a heavy hand in the fact that it has become such a accessible part of our culture now.
I think that part of it was also, I think part of it becoming so much more acceptable is we got a lot of people our age who have been playing for years, first and second and third edition, who are now in positions of visibility. Joe Magliano, Stephen Colbert, those, the late night hosts and some of those, where they're just like, oh yeah. I mean, the first time Magliano was on with Stephen Colbert, they didn't talk about anything except D&D. Like, that was their whole shtick for his 15-minute interview, was them discussing D&D. 20 years ago, you'd have never seen an actor on TV go up to Carson and talk about D&D. That just wasn't going to happen. That just wasn't going to happen.
It's true.
Or I should say 30 years ago for Carson. So I'm a little older than that. But I think that the accessibility, like when you get to see those people, like Magliano plays, Colbert plays, Vin Diesel plays, Alexa Doig. If you don't know who she is, she plays the female version of Andromeda on Andromeda.
I don't know if you're aware of D&D live day
Yeah.
live weekend that they did recently. I think it was last week or whatever. But they had a whole bunch of campaigns set up. They had one campaign that was being run by a staff member at Wizard of the Coast, and it was a reunite a bunch of actors from Game of Thrones played in a D&D game for charity, and they had Deborah Ann Woll, who played on Daredevil. She runs a game every week, and her and her players were on there running, and they're celebrity players. And they had tons of people. They had an entire WWE group playing for charity on live on camera. So
I watched a lot of that.
Yeah.
I try to go to Gen Con every year, and they have those at Gen Con where they have the celebrity D&D stuff a lot, with different actors and different famous, I think the one that I got in to see was the one with Will Wheaton and some of his friends playing, and it was it's the age of the geek, right? It's like we're nerds are now running the country. Nerds are now old enough that we have kids, and we're like, yeah, being a D&D is fun, And then you look at people, and when you get to see people that people admire, like actors, they see those people and they're like, well, that's really cool. Well, he plays D&D. Well, I thought D&D was for skinny nerds living in their basement. And then you see Vin Diesel plays D&D. You're like, are you going to call him a skinny nerd? Are you gonna go up to Vin Diesel and say, yeah, you're a nerd. You suck because you play D&D? No, nobody's ever going to do that. So it's gained this wide acceptance, and I honestly think I attribute the fact that I'm not dead or in jail to D&D because of my disability that went untreated for 30 some odd years, and I do think that it was, the weekly games, we would play 2 or 3 times a week sometimes, the same group, that kept me out of trouble because I was too busy slaughtering orcs and kobolds and rescuing princesses for 12 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, 3 times a week to get into that kind of trouble. You know what I mean? That really kind of just kept me off of that teeter-totter. And I've grown to love it. My kids love it. Now the country is all into it. Look at this. We don't live anywhere near each other, right? We're not even remotely close to each other. It's at least 300 miles to anybody. And see, this is I'm going to look at chat real here. Cicada says that your Tuesday night game is the highlight of each of his weeks. And Actherion says the same thing about how much your Wednesday games mean to it. So
stop it.
Yeah, I'm just reading chat. That's all. I mean, the guys. We love you. We all love you. And I'm sure, Ms., that your guys have the same. Your guys have the same thought about you. I'm hoping my players. I know that my Saturday group does. I'm hoping the Sunday group. We've only played once, but they all seem to have good time. And
man, I will tell you, I never ever to play D&D as a player, right? I've said this on my stream. I said it in our private chat. The last time I played in a game that was more than a single little one shot was 5 or 6 years ago. I played in a Curse of Strahd game that lasted about 10-12 weeks, and before that, the last time I had played in anything that was more than that had been, Jesus, I couldn't even tell you how long before that it was. And so I will tell you that that Sunday was probably the best role-playing experience I have had as a player since college. And I had trouble processing it emotionally the next day because it was such a good feeling to be a player again and to experience that. And it was between the story you set up and the players that we have and the truly very real interactions. Each of us really grasped who our players, who our characters were in those first couple, like first hour or so, that like there were some really genuine interactions between those characters that created connections that I didn't expect. And I gotta tell you, it was only the first session, and I was like, we can't stop playing. Like I can't
Yeah.
stop playing this.
Yeah,
like
that's
so
and
yeah, yeah.
and I really really appreciate that. And I told my wife, and I told Mark as well, that I was really anxious about Sunday night. That's it's well, there's a lot of things that piled up on top of Sunday night. First of all, my personal anxiety, from my disability. Um,
hmm
the anxiety of playing in Mark's world. It's his world. It's his baby. I feel like a step parent because I've had quite a hand in the development of this child, but it's still his baby, right? And I jokingly refer to Mark as my boss a lot. So, but and then I have people who I play with, my DM, people who I play with who are also my DM, and then other players that I play with, and now I have to do that on stream, live. Like, it's okay to DM with your friends at the dinner table because you're all a bunch of knuckleheads. It's an entirely different thing to sit down in front of the camera and go, all right, this is mine. Right? As a player, you can kind of fudge sometimes because other players will pick up the slack. But as a DM, there's no place for you to hide. There's no place for you to go.
I'd like to ask that question to you, Diz, if I could. We've obviously Rick and I have a connection through our games that we play in each other's games, and so and I'm long-winded, he's long-winded. Yeah. There's a lot of monopolizing, I think, of screen time. But a question I kind of would like to throw your way real quick is exactly what Rick said. Being on camera and putting your game out there in front of an audience. What was that like for you? What is that like? How has that kind of either like built you up or made you nervous, or what effect has that had on you personally as a dungeon master and your itself?
When I first started DMing, I had a lot of anxiety. I have a lot of anxiety anyway, just normally. But the more I do something, the more I get used to it. But putting it on stream was like starting over again. It was just like the anxiety all over again. But I just kind of pulled it in and kind of used that as energy, as I was going through the session. If it's been challenging with, I guess, some of the players. Some of the players haven't taken to it as well. Like my Saturday game, we started out streaming it like 4 years ago, and we've been playing it for going on 4 years. And we're coming right to the end of it in the next couple months here. But we stopped streaming it because it just wasn't working. Some of the dialogue that was coming out of some of the players wasn't stuff you want out in the world, and I was like, you can't say those things, this, so we just stopped doing it. And then we've had some players leave and some new ones join, and so we're like, I want to try to do this again, but everybody has to be on board, and everybody agreed upon it, and we got into it. And then a few sessions into it, we had a little bit of a conversation because we had a private meeting, like a Zoom call, because some of the players felt like the stream was more important than the game. And I brought them in. I was like, I enjoy sharing the what we do with people. That's why I'm streaming it. I said, if anybody has a problem with it, and they don't want to be on camera or whatever, or they don't want to put this out there, then we'll pull the whole thing off right now. And we all talked about it, and everybody's like, okay, I see now. You are, it's all about the game and us having fun and stuff like that. And everybody kind of came around, and they were okay with it. So I mean, other than just trying to make sure you're politically correct when you're talking about things, um, which isn't a challenge for some people, but it is for other people. So that's probably been the hardest thing to really reel in. But the anxiety, it's came down. I still have it, with everything I do. But I enjoy doing, putting it out there, and especially when I get comments from chat or anything like that. That's better than a sub a lot of times. When I get a sub, it's not about the money for me. It's not like, oh yeah, I got $2.50 or whatever it is.
Right.
It just means, oh, somebody thought I was doing good. They give me a thumbs up.
Right.
So that's what it is. I get that high from that. Yeah, an attaboy.
The attaboys. Those are
Yeah.
those are always good. Okay, so we're coming up on 2 hours. I know that Mark needs to get some sleep, but I'm pretty sure that this.
I have to go back. I have to go work.
What do you mean work?
I have more writing to do. I have writing to do.
What kind of writing do you have to do this late? Stop.
I told the diplomacy players that I would have all the factions written out for them by tonight, and I haven't worked on it at all today.
Yeah, that's a thing that you do, Mark. That you have a tendency to do. Oh, I think he cut out a little bit. I think he dropped his phone. So, at the 2 hour mark, I'd like to go ahead and let Diz go ahead and plug your channel, plug everything you're doing, what's going on in your world.
So this week I've got I'm supposed to play as a player in Friday Night Campaign. It happens every first and third Fridays of the month. I don't know if it'll happen this week because the DM, I'm not really sure about his plans, but I do have a Saturday game that I do the first and third Saturday of every month, and I will be doing it this Saturday and the third Saturday. And then next week I run a Friday night game. And it runs on the second and fourth Fridays of every month. So it may be a little confusing, but if you go over to my Twitch channel, it's Twitch TV / Dr. Diz _DM. I usually try to keep a calendar on there at least a week ahead of what I'm going to be doing. And so my Saturday night game, that usually starts about 8 p.m. Eastern, and then the Friday game starts about 10 p.m. Eastern. It runs a little late, especially if you're on the East Coast, but you can always check it out on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, and it's kind of like an organization of a few different streamers, and it's if you just go to YouTube and search for Nerdacopia Network, and that may be a little hard to spell, so again, check my Twitch channel, and there's a link for that on there. Other than the D&D stuff, me and another streamer, we do some retro gaming. We play some, like we're playing Final Fantasy VII right now, and we have some fun doing that. And we call it Super Retro Game Show Extreme, just to be crazy with the title. And it got a little extreme this past Monday night, as my co-host, he goes by Clan Diesel. He said that he would shave off all of his goatee and everything and his eyebrows if somebody did 2 tier 3 subs, and somebody did 2 tier 3 subs. So he shaved off everything on stream. So
that's awesome. That's
pretty crazy.
Mark's phone died. Sorry, everybody. Mark kind of cut out there. His phone died. He was with us on his phone. So I'll give a little plug to Mark. DM the Mark Knight. Go check out his Twitch page. Like I said, Mark's got a full schedule. He DMs 6 days a week, and on Saturdays does world building streams for us. This one is this Saturday. There will be no Saturday game or Saturday world building because it's the 4th of July here in the U.S. So, but you will be able to watch him play as Andal the Mage Sunday nights. We start at 5:30. So here's my plug. Sundays we start at 5:30 because we want to get done a little earlier because I know some of my players actually have real jobs. I'm retired. I don't do anything. So you're off till Monday. You're off till Monday this week. Yeah. And we do this DMs After Dark. Diz, I want to thank you for showing up. Really great. Diz and I haven't talked before tonight. Not really. We love to get new DMs in here. One thing I like to do before we sign off, Mark does it. I know Iz does it, I believe. Is to get your thoughts on how things went. So if I could get your opinion on how you thought things went tonight, and
I thought it was great. I always love talking to other DMs. I enjoy talking to my players, but sometimes they don't. They haven't DM'd or something, so they don't know the stresses and stuff that we go through. Sometimes I've been very open with my players. Sometimes I feel like when I do a session, I feel really down, like I didn't do a good job, and and really you have. A lot of times you're just getting down on yourself, but I enjoy getting together with other DMs, and like I said, you guys have given me a handful of things that I'm going to take back and think about and try to add into what I do and try to tweak it, make it a little bit better here and there. And I hope I might have shared some ideas for you guys, or maybe somebody out there in chat. So
awesome.
Always looking to spread the knowledge.
Yeah, that's why I started this, because a lot of times it's good to get feedback from your players, but only another DM understands the trials and tribulations of DMs. I'll tell you, like I did, is a regular for this when she so she can make it most of the times. I give an open invitation to all DMs. If you're out there, check out my Discord or go to my Twitch page at twitch.tv.the/loophole king. You can find the Discord there. Shoot me a line. Say, hey, I saw DMs After Dark. I'd like to participate. I'll put as many people on the screen as I can. I normally try to keep it at like 4 or 5 because DMs get to be long-winded, as you notice. We're all used to talking for 20 minutes at a time to explain things, so you'll have to. I try to keep it down to a minimum. But you're welcome to come back anytime you want. Pop in whenever. Like I said, we start at 10 o'clock and we normally go to. I think our first one was 3 hours. I wanted to try to keep it down a little bit because I know, like I said, Izzy's got actual work to do, and Mark's got stuff to do. So I try to keep everybody, I don't want to take too much of your time, but I think this is something good for other DMs to see. So, like I said, Diz, I thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. Thanks for, letting us pick your brain for a little bit for a couple hours tonight. I want to go ahead and say thank you to chat for watching. Again, please follow. Really trying to hit that 50 mark. Getting real close. I think I'm about 15 shy at this point. So yeah, go ahead and follow. For every 10 followers I get for a while now, until Mark gets his, I'm gifting a sub to Mark's channel, because his players really want to see him dab. So when he hits 200 subscribers, he's going to dab for 10 whole seconds on screen. Also, if he hits 200 subscribers, my sponsor, Comic Book World, which you can see over comicbookworld.com. There's a link down below here of the video. They're going to donate to the top gifter a copy of Explorer's Guide to Wildemount. So that's going to be, plus there's also a couple of players that are donating some things. Yeah, dab for the dab god. That's right. That's oh god, you guys are killing me. Like I said, go see Comic Book World at comicbookworld.com. Go over see Mark. Don't forget to check out Diz. Check out Mark's sponsor over at farberco.com. Do you have a sponsor?
Yeah, so
You don't have a sponsor yet. Okay. Just I want to make sure.
out there. I mean,
Yes, yes. I want to give everybody their shout outs. Please follow us. I will do it myself. Actually, if I could get you to do it, because I can't do it myself. It's only an actual stream if somebody says, if you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. So if you could do that for me.
so if you're watching on YouTube,
Like, subscribe, and what was the last thing?
Hit that notification bell.
hit that notification bell. Yeah.
All right, so now it's an official stream. That's that's we can't. Well, I have to do that every time for Mark because he forgets to plug his YouTube channel. Then you got to do that. Also, please remember that down below you can join us at Patreon, patreon.com/LoopholeKing, and you can donate directly to help keep this stream going so we can continue to do things like this and help the community grow. Also, there is a donation box down at the bottom. We were trying to raise $1,000 for Extra Life. Extra Life donates all their money to the Children's Miracle Network, which those monies go to children's hospitals around the country. This money will go directly to Cincinnati Children's Hospital here in the greater Cincinnati area, which, like I said earlier at the beginning of the stream, took care of my two oldest boys when they were young, when they were babies, and takes care of one of my friend's children on a regular basis, twice a month. Great people. Give what you can, $1, $5, anything you can. We appreciate it. That being said, this is the Loophole King for DMs After Dark, signing off from the dark side of the moon here in the Blue Cheese Room. You all have a great night, and I will see you later. Yes, I noticed that.